Board. Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Metzler, one of the programmers with SF DocFest. Really glad to have you here, both whether in person at the Roxy or virtually here online. You've had a chance to see this wonderful film Above and Below, and we're lucky enough to have filmmaker Sherry Brenner here. Thanks for being here, Sherry.
Thanks for having me.
So I imagine most in the audience, one of the first questions that folks often have is just like, how did you kind of first discover this story and then kind of know that this was kind of a documentary, there was a documentary to be made?
Well, I was very interested in Tibetan Buddhist art. I had made a couple of other documentaries previously on Tibetan sand painting and also the chanting of the Gyuto Tantric Choir. So I was actually interested in various cultural practices, art, and wanted to be part of that. So I used to wander around the galleries at the San Francisco Asian Art Museum and look at the Buddhist art. And I used to get very deeply involved in the looking at the symbologies and the different meaning behind these images. So at one of those events, I met Tsering Sherpa, and he was demonstrating Tibetan Thangka painting, which is an ancient traditional art form. Tibetan Thangka painting is basically a representation of Buddhist teachings in the form of a painting. And I asked him, I was really enamored with his art. He at that time was a very young artist, and this was actually in 2003. So I asked him if he might be interested in doing a short film. And not knowing what a short film involves, he naively agreed to work with me. I think he was actually just too nice to say no. So from then on, I was working with him. He also then mentioned that his father was actually a much better painter than he was, so that I would, if I wanted to get a better film, I would likely want to
Yeah.
visit Kathmandu and visit with his father in Kathmandu. And so at that time, that began a process in which I was filming here in San Francisco, and also went to Kathmandu, Nepal to film with his father, who was a great master artist in that country. And we were making a film about Buddhist Thangka painting. But slowly and surely, as time progressed, Tsering's art began to change, and he, living in the U.S., brought out a lot of different aspects of his experience. He found himself basically a person with this ancient skill that was in this modern world, and struggling to find a way to express himself here. So he moved beyond the Buddhist niche and started doing modern art, and started doing sort of social commentary about America, life in America, about Tibetan life in America, about what it meant to be in the Tibetan diaspora. And his art started really taking off. People really related to that message. And he used a lot of the Buddhist imagery in his work, but it was totally in a different context, not for meditation, but for communication. And people really enjoyed it. They saw something old, something new combined, how to bring those together. And then beyond that, I continued to film through graduate school, through the birth of my child, and a lot of things in my life kind of kept backburnering the film. And it became like a little like my boyhood. It was filmed over a very long period of time. But at each phase, he kind of broke out into something totally new mediums, new form, new messages. And I was filming and documenting these changes as he became more and more popular. And he got, eventually you'll see in the film the story of his career. But fast forward to the present, he's now become a global artist, and he has solo shows around the world. He's spearheaded a movement in Nepal to bring modern art to Nepal. And there's a lot of beautiful things he's doing with his art, and I basically filmed that whole process. Yes.
Well, I thought it turned out really nicely, and I guess one of the questions that often comes up with documentary filmmaking is how much was this film kind of like observational of like you kind of following the kind of track of his kind of evolution as artist, and then was he a collaborator at all, or in the sense of it's just more of like Okay, I'll let you tell your story and I'll kind of see what it is. And so, yeah, was it like, did he make you aware of different changes were going on, or was it just kind of checking in and seeing what was going on?
No, we weren't really in touch. It was more like whenever I would want to film for various reasons, I would hit him up for a shoot, he'd be like, okay, it's time for my MFA thesis film. Let's go shoot some more stuff. And I would just kind of pick up on what he was doing at that time. Not every piece was like a milestone, but certainly, every piece that I ended up using in the film had sort of a significance in the overall story. And I would say, I was it wasn't observational. I didn't film for long periods of time and wait for things to emerge. It was more time was the observational factor here. I had a lot
Hmm.
of time for things to evolve. And through those evolutions, I was able to pick out the themes that really stood out. And it honestly wasn't until the very end that I really, really deeply understood what his message was about, to be honest. Yeah. Mhm.
And do you think, obviously you had a kind of appreciation for some of the underlying aspects to the kind of creative process in art. And so how has your kind of relationship with the art kind of changed over the course of making the film too?
Well, it changed some of my own ideas. Tsering also was very, one of his issues was that when he came here as a Tibetan artist painting Buddhist Thangka paintings, he felt like people sort of glorified or almost deified him as a Buddhist artist painting
Hmm.
Buddhas. And they had this impression that everyone that was Tibetan or painted Thangka paintings was basically monk-like or, uh, you know, a yogi or,
Wow.
magical or from Shambhala or something. So he really struggled to sort of demythologize that image of Tibetan art and Tibetans. And I guess I was a little guilty of that. Uh, I also glorified those practices and that meditation and that whole experience to a certain degree. And I don't not I still actually revere that experience and that point of view. And I do think it's very heartfelt for many, but not for all Tibetans, not for all people that paint Thangka paintings. And experience shapes your own art. And I think the film shows that that's what happened here. Art is about everything around you, and Tsering's art became about everything, not just about Tibetan Buddhist experience. And that's a little bit about what the title indicates. So for those of you who are curious about the title, you might watch the film and you'll figure that out on your own.
Well, very cool. Well, thanks again for making this film, Sherry, and sharing it with us. We're really excited to have it as part of SF Doc Fest.
Thank you.